months in a row, we're doing a bonus episode.
It's a bonus.
You know, a lot of our listeners have demanded more of us.
Like who?
Just all of them.
Really?
They all want more.
They want more of this?
Can't get enough.
Okay.
Look, I don't write the rules. So, we're doing another bonus episode, and who knows, maybe these won't be bonus episodes. Maybe this is just, are we going to 2 a month?
I don't want to say that.
Oh, Megan hates the podcast.
It's a lot.
Megan hates the podcast.
No, I love it. I wish.
I'm sorry, guys. I wish that our editor and producer and all-around podcast maker
Listen,
love the podcast, but apparently she doesn't.
I don't get paid to do this.
Oh.
Okay? This is all free labor.
Wow.
So.
I'm coming in hot right now.
Anyway.
We're doing a bonus episode. Megan, since you are the one who's kind of going to host this bad boy, why don't you tell us what's happened in this episode?
Yeah, so for the last, 9 episodes, we have been saying, email us, let us know what's resonating with you, let us know your stories.
Yep.
One of those episodes I mentioned, even if you want to send something anonymously, you can. So we have a letter.
We have a letter.
We have an anonymous letter. They go by the name Jamie.
They go by the name Jamie.
Yeah. So I was thinking I would just read this letter to you.
I love being read to.
And then
Much like a child.
There were many moments when I was reading through this letter that I felt you would have a strong connection to or reaction. Mm-hmm. So I just want to kind of read it and let you react.
Okay.
Whatever comes to mind for you.
I'm not very good at reacting to things, so.
That's all you do.
Why are you laughing? All right, this sounds great. Let's go.
Yeah, are you excited?
I'm reacting. Yeah, I'm having a reaction. So.
Here we go. Dear Megan and Mike, in one of your episodes, you mentioned you would be open to receiving anonymous stories. I felt very drawn to submit my experience for you guys to read on the podcast. Before reading this, it's important to note that kids were very desired, and my husband and I planned our entire life around starting a family. But when we did get pregnant, it was extremely difficult to wrap my head around there being a baby in there, even 9 months into pregnancy. When our daughter was born, I remember just looking at her and feeling like she was someone else's baby. There was no magic, sparkly bond, and she didn't look like either of us, just a wrinkly little alien. Even after I got to hold her for the first time, she didn't feel like mine. Looking back, this is one of the first things that should have clued me into the fact that I would develop postpartum depression. The rest of the stay in the hospital was a struggle. I quickly realized that I couldn't sleep when she was in the room. Any sound she made, even just grunting or wiggling around, would put me on high alert. I couldn't calm down or relax. But I also didn't feel bonded or loving. I just felt so overwhelmed and lost. I connected to that part where, like, not being able to sleep when you heard the baby. Oh.
Well, especially the first time.
Yeah. And every little sound or noise would just freak me out.
When because our baby was early, she was connected to a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And
it would beep.
And it would beep constantly. She was hooked up to one of those O2 monitors, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't attach very well. They constantly slip. And so, like, it's constantly beeping to make it think that, like, your kid's not getting enough oxygen. But then the nurse just comes in and presses a button to silence the machine.
She just turns it off. Silences.
And so we were like, why? Can we just not have it? And they were like, no, you have to have it. Yeah. It's like, what?
But anyway, that just, like, triggered me a little.
Not great.
A lot of my descriptions going forward may sound insightful or like I was really keyed in on how I was feeling, but that is all understanding I have now in hindsight. All I could feel at the time was exhaustion and like I was in a tornado. Like I could never settle down and get my bearings. I've had anxiety and depression basically my whole life and knew to be on the lookout for postpartum depression. But even with that, I didn't recognize it. Looking back now, a lot of the memories in my head look blurry because that's how it felt. Like things wouldn't come into focus, and these symptoms would last for the next 18 months. We came home a few days later, and Chris went back to work a few days after that. We had family visiting to help for the first few weeks, but it quickly settled into me being at home all day alone. Luckily, Emma was a really great sleeper, but all my life turned into was feed, change, sleep, repeat every 3 hours, with very little to distinguish day and night. And that makes it feel like one interminably long day with no end in sight. At one point, Chris took a picture of me holding Emma and was showing it to me. He was laughing about it, joking that I looked so unbelievably miserable and that it was funny that he randomly caught an expression like that, thinking that I was just really tired. But I remember thinking, no, that's a pretty accurate representation of how I feel. I knew to be on the lookout for postpartum depression, but I just thought, well, anyone would feel this way when they are so exhausted from birth and sleep deprivation. But it was more than that. Nothing felt like it was going according to plan.
So first of all, that crystallizes pretty well how I felt, like, from the minute Snuzz came out. Like, I remember Snuzz coming out and me just staring down at this baby and just going, like, I feel like almost worse than nothing. I kind of am grossed out by this thing. And yeah, I would say it took me those first 18 months. I was like totally disconnected. And, as humans, we do this thing where, like, we feel things and then we like try to logic our way out. Oh, well, I must be feeling this way because of da-da-da-da-da-da. And, like, oh, this must be a common experience that everybody else has, blah, 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 blah. And so, like, we almost gaslight ourselves into, like, believing that our feelings are not real. Mm-hmm. Or, like, that our feelings are real, but everybody else must have these same feelings, so it's totally fine and normal. And, I've spoken about this a lot on the podcast, but, like, for me, things didn't begin to, like, become easier until I started to, like, vocalize, this is how I'm feeling. And for other people to say, that sounds rough.
Yeah.
It's got to be harder for the person who gives birth because you've had this thing inside of you. There is already this, like, sort of just like literal physical bond. So then when the baby comes out and you don't feel that bond, it must be, like, really heartbreaking. Because, like, for me, like, there's no bond to this baby. Like, I literally, from the minute the baby comes out, I have to work on developing a bond.
Yeah.
But if you've been, if you've been the host to the parasite, there's at least some connection, like, however minimal. So then for the baby to come out and then to, like, not feel that, that's gotta be tough.
Yeah, and I can really relate to when she was talking about your life just turns into this cycle of feed, sleep, change, repeat, and not having, like, markers in your day to note the passage of time, like, especially when you went back to work, like, that was really, like, you coming home was the marker in the day of, like, oh, now it's evening. I have no idea what I just did all day long.
Yeah. And you were fortunate because you had your mom around a lot.
Yes,
so you at least had that.
That was very helpful.
I
remember at one point she was like, it seems like you're getting in a good rhythm. Like, maybe I might not need to. And I was like, no, please come. Please. Because that was really needed. Just to have someone to talk to and be there.
I do wonder, I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody who says that they love newborns. And having a kid is great when they get to, like, 18 months. But those first 18 months, I'd be interested, listeners, if you love those first 18 months, we'd love to hear from you.
I think my mom's a newborn. I think she really loves the baby phase.
Yeah, but your mom is like an angel.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like...
Shout out to Lynn Dempsey.
Yeah, I mean...
We love you.
She's built differently, you know?
Yeah, she loves the baby stage.
Because it is all around, even if you have a good sleeping baby, like, it is all around difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, continuing on. Looking at how my childhood was, sometimes I surprised myself that I wanted kids at all. From the outside, it would look like a relatively normal middle-class family in a small town. I was well behaved, I got good grades, had few friends, and stayed out of trouble. But I was pretty explicitly told from a very early age that my parents' love was conditional, and then was reminded frequently that I wasn't living up to expectations. A pretty common refrain I heard growing up was, "Well, your sister was able to do it, why can't you?" If I showed any weakness, like being sick or having negative feelings, I was told I was lazy, making it up for attention, or being dramatic. And any show of personality or quirkiness was met with that disgusted look you would expect from a middle school mean girl of, "What are you doing? You're embarrassing yourself." I pretty quickly learned to shove all that down and just stay the quiet little people pleaser that everyone wanted me to be on the surface. In addition to this, my parents divorced when I was very young. I was constantly put in the middle as the go-between and would often witness screaming arguments, including in public at my school events. I became the person that both parents explicitly leaned on as their therapist and was responsible for helping them cope. I remember my dad had to write a little blurb about me in second grade for a project I had, and one of the things he mentioned was that I constantly told him that I would take good care of him. That's something I always felt a lot of pride over, even into early adulthood, but I look back on that now. What kind of 7-year-old thinks like that?
Yeah, it's tough when you have parents that divorce and then basically utilize their kids as like as the go-between, or it's
emotional support.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, the amount of times that like one person was like, one parent would say to me like, "Oh, tell your father this," or "Tell your mom," and it's like, no, like it's not my fault you two can't talk to each other. Like,
yeah.
How's that my job? And like when you're a kid, you just want your parents to love you, and then it becomes a situation like where, well, this parent will only love me if I have these feelings about the other parent, and it's like, how are you supposed to navigate that?
So hard.
Yeah, it sucks.
Ugh,
it's really rough.
That's awful.
That's why, like, like, it's a little new agey, but the whole like co-parenting thing, like, it's really easy to like kind of make fun of all that, but like, I don't know, I can appreciate parents that are actively attempting to like not make their kids, put their kids in the middle of their divorces.
Absolutely.
Like,
should be the goal.
Yeah.
Before Emma was born, I worked through a lot of this in therapy, understanding that this wasn't a normal or healthy dynamic, and that I was going to do better. I really thought I understood it all and had moved past it. I had identified all of the patterns of behavior I wanted to change, and I was going to be a great mom, because I knew all the things not to do. I had a plan. There were 2 things I didn't realize. First was that knowing what not to do doesn't mean that you automatically know what to do instead. I would never criticize my kid for ending up in an emotionally abusive relationship like it was their fault, but that didn't automatically teach me how to care for a newborn. I thought that when Emma was born, I would suddenly develop all these maternal instincts and just know what to do and be floating around in a cloud of bliss. Because after all, I was going to be the best mom. When that didn't happen, I felt like a failure.
It's interesting because I'm a control freak. Control is like, I mean, we just had this conversation the other day, or earlier today. But like, I've learned through therapy that control is like my number one trigger, and that everything that I get triggered by, anything, whether it's finances or my feelings around justice and injustice and things like that, all comes down to control. And what's interesting is that you can plan and plan and plan, and this is part of what I learned about my anxiety in therapy, is that a lot of my anxiety was to try and have control. A lot of the behaviors I developed due to my anxiety was so I could have control. And what actually was happening was I was having less and less control by experiencing the anxiety and going through those behavioral patterns. And so you can plan as much as you want, but the reality is that it doesn't really matter how much you plan in general for like most things. You can plan, but you also have to recognize and realize that, like, the plans are all going to go to shit, and there's some flexibility that you've got to have, and sort of, leaning into the unknown, which for people who have control issues is like the number one nightmare.
Yeah. And just in general, the idea of having a baby, like, society pushes this narrative of, like, it's all rainbows and butterflies, and you're just gonna know what to do immediately and have this amazing, incredible bond. And for some cases, for a lot of cases, that's not going to happen right away. And it can be pretty dark in the beginning.
Well, it's also, even if you don't experience any postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, the idea that, like, oh, the baby will come out and instinct will take over, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I think if you asked 100 parents, hey, did any instinct kick in? I think most of them would go, no, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just fumbled around until we figured out what worked for us.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, like, probably something new parents need to know. Like, you can read whatever you want, you can watch the videos, you can talk to people, but you're going to figure out what works for you. And everyone starts off not knowing anything. And like, that's just how it goes. Like, you just figure it out. But it can be terrifying when you're taking care of this baby, and it's like, you think, oh, well, I should just know what I'm supposed to do. And it's like, why? Like, why would you just know?
Yeah.
Have you ever had a baby before?
Right.
It's completely illogical.
Yeah. And she gets to this later on, but, we used to live in tribal communities.
Yeah.
Like, we'd have a village built in to our new families, help built in. I didn't realize how much I had internalized all the messages I got growing up, that I was lazy, weak, dramatic, responsible for how other people feel, and most of all, that I was not good enough and there was something inherently wrong with me. The lack of maternal instincts and the challenges of the early days confirmed every suspicion I ever had about myself deep down. The postpartum was hard because I was weak and lazy and didn't care enough. That all of Emma's care, both physical and emotional, was my responsibility, and if things went wrong with her emotional development, it was my fault. And that there was something irreparably wrong with me, and I would never be a good mom. Fast forward 30 years down the road, Emma was going to end up as broken as I was because I wasn't capable of being a good mom. I remember feeling paralyzed with overwhelming guilt for every little decision I made. There were 3 goals I had for her newborn days. 1, encourage independent sleep to avoid insomnia issues that my husband has. 2, lots of floor time to aid in motor development and exploring. And 3, lots of snuggles so she would feel loved. Those 3 things at any given time are somewhat mutually exclusive, because if she's sleeping in her crib, she's not being held or playing, and if she's being held, she's not exercising or sleeping independently. I wanted to find the ideal balance between those 3 things, but I just remember feeling like I was failing her because she wasn't getting enough of any of them. I couldn't add more hours to the day. This makes me think like it's almost like that anxiety, that like heightened anxiety of like you can't get everything correct.
So I share in that. There's a lot. Yeah, I resonate a lot with this because, like, I grew up in a family of a pretty broken family, and I was like, I'm not gonna have the same. My kid is not gonna experience the same thing I've experienced. And then because I wasn't in therapy, and I should have been, but I wasn't in therapy right when Snuz was born, there was a lot of stuff that I did early on that I was like pretty convinced that like I've ruined her, she's gonna be ruined, because the first 3 years are like the most important. and along these same lines, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to like get quote unquote get it right.
Yeah.
And I think we all do this. I think we're all concerned about making sure that our kids have the best beginning so that they can like have a good rest of their lives. But here's the reality. Like, we can do everything right and our kids could still end up,
Yeah.
you know, messed up. We can do everything right. There's genetics that comes into play. And we can totally mess up in the beginning, but then get things right later on, and our kids could be totally fine.
Yeah.
Like, it's like there's so much pressure that we put on ourselves, especially people who understand child development, because those 3 years are really important. But like, what are those three things? Those beginning 3 years really important about? It's important that they feel loved. It's important that they feel safe.
Secure attachment.
That they feel secure. Right? Like, those are the most valuable things. And like, their brains will develop and they will grow and become hopefully healthy people in doing those things.
Yeah.
But we just put a ton of pressure on ourselves.
Absolutely.
You know?
That was one of the situations that stood out to me and I was able to recognize wasn't logical, but it didn't help me feel any less guilty. I clearly had some perfectionist tendencies. In therapy since then, I was asked why I feel the need to be perfect. Aside from the obvious connections to my childhood, I realized that I viewed my parents as having failed in their attempt at parenting, and I knew I wanted to be different. But I didn't have a model for where the line between failure and good enough was. And if I didn't know where good enough was, I had to strive for perfection, so that I didn't accidentally fall over that line. That's something I still really struggle with. I know I can't be a perfect parent, and I'm definitely not, but I still struggle with giving myself a little grace when I can't do everything for everyone all at once. One of the other challenges of this time was that parenting felt so different than I anticipated. At least for my teen years, I knew I wanted kids because of how much I loved being a big sister. My sister Nicole is 8 years younger than me, and given that age gap, our relationship has always felt more like a mentor and mentee instead of peers. But when I thought about being a parent, I pictured those vulnerable moments of guidance and support, teaching them to know right from wrong, holding them accountable, but also showing them that it's okay to make mistakes and how to move forward afterward. And I knew that I would be good at this part because it already felt so easy and natural with my sister. I didn't recognize it at the time, but all I was doing was saying the things to her that I so desperately needed to hear. This kind of guidance and caring is still what I think of as parenting. In the early newborn days, there isn't any of that. Chris and I now joke in hindsight that taking care of a newborn is like taking care of a complicated houseplant that yells at you. There are specific technical things you need to do at specific times to meet their physical needs, but none of it is particularly emotional. It's technical and a complete different skill set than parenting, and this felt so empty compared to what I was expecting. Given how I grew up hiding from the chaos of my home life, shutting down any genuine expression of personality or deep feelings, I have been plagued by loneliness my whole life, and I think subconsciously I had anticipated that once she was born, that bond I would have with her would help ease some of that pain. This is something else I've worked out in therapy since. It's not a child's job to heal that wound in their parent. I always resented that my mom expected me to be her therapist and fix things for her. Yet here I was unknowingly expecting the same.
So, this is something I think you and I can talk about in a future episode. So, like, parenting is healing. Like, there are many times where I have said things to my kiddos, or I've done something for them differently than how it was done to me. And in those moments, a small piece of me heals. And that's important and valuable. It's part of breaking the cycle, right? Like, that's what it's all about. It's about doing it differently and giving your inner child what it needs while giving your children what they need. And it can become problematic when you are basically reliant on that for healing.
Right.
Like, the work is not incumbent upon the children screwing up and you doing things differently. It's incumbent upon you going and doing the work And then in those moments when you have a chance to do things differently, recognizing, oh, this is a chance where I can do things differently. This is a chance where I can do for my child what I feel like I needed in those moments.
Yeah.
But I think, that like for those of us who are looking for healing and are looking for any way to kind of feel whole, I think it's really easy to conflate those two ideas. Yeah. I mean, I certainly, there was a part of me that was like, I'm going to do things differently and that's going to make me feel better. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's true. And like, it's not my kid's responsibility to make me feel better.
Right. Yeah, that's really, really hard.
But it's tough. Yeah, it's really, really tough. Because like it's like you have good intentions. The intentions are good. Mm-hmm. Like the goal is to do well as a parent, but if we're not careful, we can actually fall into some pretty nasty habits.
Absolutely. This is something I still don't really admit to anyone, but I didn't really feel any bond or connection to Emma until she was around 18 months old. At this point, her personality was really starting to show, and there became a give and take to our relationship that was more than just meeting her physical needs. I think it's a combination of several factors. In general, I struggle with really feeling different, contradictory emotions at once. So if I'm exhausted and overwhelmed by all the struggles of having a baby, I can't access the feelings of love and connection, even if they are there underneath. And it's also hard to have a relationship with someone you don't really know. I knew I would do anything to protect her, but I also didn't really know anything about her. I've found the bond I feel develops more naturally now that I can relate to her as another person. As this bond developed, many of my postpartum depression symptoms started to fade.
Yeah, I relate to that. Because it was around 18 months that I started to feel a connection to Snuz.
Yeah. Things just get so much lighter, too, in general.
It is true that, like...
around that time.
You are just keeping this potato alive.
The complicated houseplant.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And then they get slightly more interesting because they start to smile, they start to coo, they make sounds, and that. But, like... as Jamie mentions, like, there's not give and take really until they get to like 18 months, and then even then, like our second mouse is a little over 2, and like it isn't really within the last few months that there's been like real, like, we can like kind of have a conversation now.
Yeah.
Like I can ask her questions and she can give me answers, and like she can express ideas, and
yeah, there's way more personality.
Yeah. And like it is hard to just care and bond to something or someone that doesn't give anything.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to know that can happen, you know?
Yeah.
The bond might not come right away, and just people are very scared to talk about that.
Yeah.
And nervous about it. But, you know, after getting into this podcast and doing some of this work, like, that does happen.
Yeah.
More than you'd think. As Emma's gotten older, there's obviously a lot more of the emotional guidance aspect of parenting. I've found that holding space for her big feelings, no matter how inconsequential the situation may seem to me, has actually come quite easy. I'm not overwhelmed when she is devastated and that her block tower fell down, or when she's angry that she can't have blueberries for every meal, and I love sitting with her through that to help her learn how to process it. However, I always thought doing that would be really healing for me, giving her what I never had. But in reality, I've actually found it really triggering. All I feel sometimes is, she is so easy to love. What about me was so hard to love? That one's really hard to read. I get emotional at that part. I recognize that that's not logical, but it's still always there in the background.
I think that for me, one of the biggest breakthroughs that I've had in therapy is like not owning other people's inability, like not owning other people's failures or like fault, like shortcomings. So like, because I part of my journey through therapy has been dealing with like major insecurities and not being worthy and not enoughness, which I think is so common across so many people. um, but yeah, I like have spent a lot of my life wondering like why couldn't my parents just be good parents? Like why wasn't I enough to like get my mom to not be a drug addict and to get my dad to not be an alcoholic, and why? Like what didn't I have that they needed? And like in going through therapy, you get to, you hopefully get to a place where you realize that like it has nothing to do with me. Mm-hmm. And then it's just a matter of believing that and letting go, and like recognizing that like my mom was sick, my dad was sick, and like they had their problems, and forgiveness is not about other people, it's about us. It's about us moving forward. And so like being able to have compassion and empathy and forgive, so that you can heal and move forward.
Yeah.
But that's really hard.
Yeah.
Because like it requires like letting go of the idea of like oh well, if I forgive then they're getting off. There's no accountability. At least that's what it's always been for me. Like my issues with forgiveness are often that if I forgive then there's no accountability. But I guess the question I ask myself is like, what makes me feel better? Do I feel better not forgiving and holding on to this? Or do I feel better forgiving, letting it go and moving forward? And like the answer has always been at this point to just forgive and let it go.
We're all just little kids grown up,
Yeah.
Even though I was still struggling at the 18-month mark, we decided to plan on having a second child. We really wanted kids close in age. I knew I had to prepare differently this time around. One of the things I struggled with the first time around was loneliness and a feeling that no one understood what I was going through. When Emma was born, I didn't really have any friends with kids. I didn't have anyone I could talk to about the struggles, and I didn't have anyone validating that, yes, this is really hard. There's also an intense isolation that comes with watching a child, especially one so young who gives nothing back. I remember reading Hunt, Gather, Parent by Michaeline Duclef, and there was a section where she talked about her experience with postpartum depression. She had a similar experience of PPD setting in due to isolation after her husband went back to work. As part of her research from the book, she visited hunter-gatherer communities to observe their parenting, and she said that postpartum mothers are surrounded by a large group of other new mothers all day caring for their newborns and dealing with daily tasks as a group. And she thought, well, of course I was depressed. We're not meant to do it alone. Sometimes I wonder if what society so often calls postpartum depression is actually just the reasonable, intense loneliness that comes from the postpartum experience in Western culture. Definitely love that point. So true. Mm-hmm. Given that we had just moved, I knew I was especially at risk for this because we didn't know anyone. I threw myself into trying to meet as many people as possible and make friends. An incredible task for a natural introvert who was also pregnant and exhausted. But it turns out having a kid and one on the way is a great conversation starter with other moms. I brought Emma to playgroups and story times as often as I could, because those different events are tailored to relatively specific age range. I ended up making 3 friends that had girls the same age as Emma and another baby on the way. We were all due within 4 months of each other. That's awesome.
That's really great, yeah.
Need community. Takes a village. This has made such a difference this time around, especially since we were all in the same exact boat with toddlers and a newborn. While I still struggle with loneliness and probably always will, it was much more manageable at this time. And now I have a group of lifelong friends that all get to watch our kids grow up together. As I described before, another thing I struggled with was the guilt I felt from not feeling a strong bond with Emma and not really liking the baby stage. In therapy, I learned that while PPD played a role, it is not uncommon for the bond to take time to develop because it's hard to access vulnerable emotions when you're in survival mode. I knew the second time around I had to give myself more grace and have some more reasonable expectations of myself. Going into it, I assumed that there wouldn't be a bond there at first, but trusted that it would develop like it had with Emma. And now I knew that just because I don't like the baby phase doesn't mean I don't like being their mom. I also realized that I have a hard time feeling like a good mom when I don't feel like myself. If I can't even find myself in the chaos, how am I supposed to find another person? The most important thing I had to do was explain to my husband why I struggled so much after Emma was born. We argued a lot that first year or so because I constantly felt like he wasn't taking care of me when I was in such a vulnerable state. But in his defense, he would argue that he did everything that was physically possible to help. He changed diapers, got up at night, did chores from the time he got home to the time he went to bed, shortchanged work so he could be home more. He didn't understand why I felt this way, and I was nowhere near being able to articulate it to him. I felt lost, unmoored, and like I didn't recognize myself at all. Not that I would have been able to articulate that at the time, but Chris has such a security in himself that he still struggles to understand that I could get so lost from who I am, and he can't fully understand it. It is hard to anticipate the emotional needs I had. As I've tried to explain to him what I needed and what I would need this time around, I realized that what I was asking for was mothering. I remember watching a TikTok or something where a mom came into the hospital room after her daughter had given birth and first went to the new mom because she had to check on her baby first. And I remember crying watching that because it was such a clear depiction of what I needed. I wanted someone to see me and take care of me in that way in such a state of vulnerability like a mother would. And I realized it wasn't fair to expect Chris to fill that need because it's fundamentally different than his role. But I also wasn't sure what I was going to do because that's not something my mom was capable of. For context, after my daughter was born, my mom insisted to my husband that I was faking my birth injuries. Damn! That's messed up.
That's tough.
Whew. So now this is her second child. After Adam was born, I had pretty extensive birth injuries. I couldn't sit from the pain and could barely walk. I always thought that I would never find that type of mothering that I was looking for postpartum, but all the people that took care of me at the hospital really helped me find that. They were happy to help and never made me feel like I was asking too much when I needed them. I will never forget what they did for me. For my childhood, I felt like I had started at the bottom of a cliff, and through therapy I had climbed out of the cliff and fully moved away from it. But when Emma was born and postpartum depression hit full force, I felt like I had been kicked back off the cliff and landed back at the bottom, and it took a ton of work to climb back out again. With all the preparation I did before Adam was born, it ended up feeling like I was pushed just over the edge and was clinging to the cliff. I hadn't fully lost sight of myself, but I was teetering on the edge. As the months passed, things did get easier as we settled into his schedule and he slept through the night and his personality started showing. Thankfully, I can say that my resilience won out, but it was close, and there were definitely days where I felt like I was slipping back into the darkness. At this point, I'm not even sure I could handle going through the whole process again. I have to put so much effort into just being healthy and stable for my family, but I don't want to just get by. I want to be a happy and full person in a way that I was never allowed to be as a kid, and to be the best mom I can be to the kids and to myself. I need to put what I want and need in the equation too, and not just because it's what's best for the kids, but because it matters in its own right. I think that's a lesson that a lot of mothers learn through having kids. Looking back, it's hard to think of anything someone could have said to me to prepare for the difficulty I faced, but I'm hoping that by sharing this, it will help someone already in that similar situation feel less alone. Thank you for helping share my story with others. Jamie.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie, for writing that in and sharing that with us. It's a lot. I remember when my parents divorced, I said to myself, and have said to myself for a very long time, that like when I become a parent, I am gonna sacrifice everything for my children, and nothing else will matter except for them and what their needs are. And I think that that's a very valiant thought. The reality is that when we sacrifice everything for our children, we lose ourselves, and we diminish our ability to be a good parent. Like, in order for me to be a good person, I need to have my needs met. And like when I don't have my needs met, it limits my ability to be a good person. And that includes being a good parent. That's true for all of us.
It's like putting your oxygen mask on first,
yes,
in order to help anybody else.
Yes, 100%. And like, you know, I know you, Megan, you struggle with this all the time, where there'll be days where you're just like, I need to work out. And I'll say, well, like, go work out. And then you'll say, but then I'm losing time with the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
daily struggle in my brain.
And it's like, yeah, that's true. You're going to lose 30 minutes with the kids. But if you don't go work out, even though you're going to get 2 hours with the kids right now, how good is that 2 hours? What's the quality of that? Wouldn't it be better to have a high quality single hour with them because you've given yourself 30 minutes to work out and then another 10 to 15, 20 minutes to shower and put yourself together? Isn't that more valuable than 2 hours of crap?
Right.
And I think like we do this with I mean, I know like as teachers we talk about like, well, kids need more outside time. It's like, but if we give them more outside time, they won't have time to learn. And it's like, yeah, but like the 2 hours of learning they're getting are crap. If we give them extra outside time, will the hour of time we get be better than the 2 hours of crap? My kids don't need more of me. They need the best version of me.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
It's really, really hard to like say I need to go take care of myself, because it does. You feel like you're letting your children down, or you feel like you're letting your partner down. You feel like you're not holding your end of the bargain. You know, like you're not doing your part.
Yep.
But I think that's what makes relationships stronger, is like recognizing that, you know what, I'm not holding up my end of the bargain right now. And in order for me to hold up my end of the bargain, I need to go do these things for me.
Yeah. Highly recommend self-care.
Yeah. Well, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which for people who aren't familiar, Maslow's hierarchy needs, like there are certain sort of foundational things that every person needs in order to be secure. And in education, it's in order to start accessing any kind of education or learning. But like those things are like being fed, being safe, being loved, sleep, like enough sleep. Like there are all of the, these very sort of basic things. But like we all, those things are not just for kids. Like we need, as adults, we need those things too. Like if I don't get a good night's rest, if I am not eating nutritious food, if I'm not feeling loved, if I'm not feeling safe, like I'm then not going to be a regulated human. I'm not going to be able to be the best version of myself.
Yeah.
But when you got a newborn, it's hard because you're not gonna get sleep.
You can't. Yeah,
you're not gonna get a minute.
Cannot take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Which why it's so helpful to have a partner who is focused on meeting your needs.
Yeah.
And then hopefully a community that can then help your partner. Again, it takes a village. Like we all need to be supporting and there for new parents.
Yeah. Well, this was fun.
I know. I liked doing something new.
It's nice to read stories or speak to people who have had experiences that are relatable. Because I know, like, when we had our baby, a lot of what we were being told was, oh, it's so great. Having a baby is so great. Everything's so great. And when you're not feeling great, but everyone around you is saying how great it all is,
yeah,
it can be very alienating and as Jamie said, it can become very, very lonely.
I love that she talked about getting herself a community, like really putting in the effort and making that a priority before she had her second kid, of like finding, because you have to make your own village. It doesn't magically appear, as Chelsea Myers says in Quiet Connection podcast.
Yeah.
It's something you really have to work at. So thank you for writing in, Jamie. This has been really great.
Yeah.
If anyone else wants to write us, again, our email is ponderingparenthoodpodcast@gmail.com, or you can DM us through Instagram, Pondering Parenthood Pod. We'll be awaiting your messages.
That's going to do it for us.
It's going to do it.
All right.
We'll talk to you